It's Organ. I make videos about filmmaking and different filmmaking topics related to directing. Today I want to talk about my filmmaking dreams and journey, future journey, hopefully. So yeah, if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to stick around. So as a beginning filmmaker, first of all, I really need to basically learn my craft, so all the different elements of directing specifically. And I think to start doing that, I want to make a very experimental project, first of all, one that doesn't have a lot of constraints and one that's quite easy to do on my own. Then I would also love to direct a music video and really see how music can be used to create a rhythm, especially in the editing, and also how to create a visual story that works with a song. Another thing that I would like to do is to find a mentor or mentors, find people who have been in the industry for a couple of years and know what they're doing and kind of give me some guidance. Something else that I would also like to do is a silent film, so that I cannot rely on dialogue. I feel that a lot of my movies rely a little too heavily on dialogue and don't use visual language enough, so I'm going to try and force myself to really just purely rely on performance and visual language. Something else that I'm also interested in exploring is making, similarly to the experimental film, but like a very self-indulgent film, one where I'm not thinking about audience and I'm not thinking about market. I'm purely doing it because it's something that interests me, that I think will be fun, and that's it. I also really want to write a film in French, but I'm not putting a lot of pressure on myself for that just yet. The next topic that I want to get into is working with actors. I would like to, for example, make a logistically a very simple film, so one location, two actors, but I really focus on the performance between the actors and crafting that performance. And then sort of in a different way, I want to one day direct a ensemble piece with a lot of actors involved, so that I can see how that dynamic affects the filmmaking, and also how I have, as a director, how I have to pay attention to the choreography of the camera and the actors' movements and their eye lines. Following on from that, I would like to act, not necessarily in a big role or for like a long project, but I would like to know what it feels like to receive direction and what it feels like to have to perform in front of the camera. Essentially, I think that's incredibly important for any director. And finally, I would like to direct intimate scenes at some point with an intimacy coordinator, of course. I think that's kind of it's a way for me to push my directing, because it's something that I've never done before. It's also something that I've kind of shied away from because I'm a little bit intimidated, but I want to tell intimate stories. I want to tell intimate stories, so I think that that's something that I need to step into at some point. The next thing that I want to talk about is the visual language, the aesthetic of making movies. I want to make a movie that's purely focusing on making beautiful visuals and on conveying a mood, a feeling, and not necessarily thinking about story, not necessarily thinking about character, but like just really purely visual, and like making sure that the visuals are stunning. A lot of different locations that are rife with stories and that are beautiful come to mind. For example, there's the sort of Parisian windows and balconies There's Lecce in the south of Italy, which is a beautiful village. Some other places that come to mind are, like, for example, Spanish courtyards. Terborance also is a place in Valais that I've had my eye on, because it's just beautiful nature, beautiful landscapes. Once I've gained confidence as a director, I can sort of slowly start to build my own voice and to become a little bit more specific in what I want to make. Saying that, I would like to be able to write something and then hand it off to somebody else and see what they do with it, see the way that they would direct it, because I think it's a really interesting exercise in letting go of control on the one hand, and also of I think when you have somebody else look at your work, you gain a completely different perspective, and they see things that you wouldn't have thought about, and I think that perspective would bring a lot to my work. Then similarly, I would like to direct something that somebody else has written. I have a lot of friends who are very good writers, and I would love to be able to collaborate with them and to see what I would make based on their writing. I would also like to adapt some of my favorite stories into short films or into separate movies. Again, writing that I love and seeing what I can do with it. And also, I guess, bringing stories to life that I've grown up loving and that I've loved for a very long time is really motivating. I also want to look into mythology, specifically Irish mythology and Filipino mythology, and see what I can pull from that and how I can get inspired by that. Another thing is I want to make like a genre movie, because it's really outside of my comfort zone and it's not something that I've tried before. A horror comedy, for example, like Scream Queens. There's a very specific visual language that is being used, and I want to test myself out when it comes to that. I would love to be able to tell stories with a specificity to them. I'm thinking right now of cultural specificity, so if the story is set in a specific place, that place has an impact on the story, it plays an important role in the story. Then if the people in the story have a specific cultural background, that also plays a part in the story. I would also be really curious to look into fantasy and see, because I think that it would push me to use a creative muscle that I haven't used before. The movies that I've made in the past are based on either real life stories or stories that I've observed in real life, and fantasy pushes me to expand my imagination, to maybe rely more on my ability to draw or to collaborate with people who have done fantasy before. But I do love the fantasy genre, and I've read countless fantasy novels, so that's something that I really, really, really would love to be able to dwell into. Now, when it comes to the purely technical side, I do want to push myself to make a technically ambitious movie, whether that's in the camera movement, in the choreography between the actors, or both. Ambitious in terms of logistics. So maybe it's in a remote area, maybe it's a lot of different locations, and I have to figure out how to move from one location to the other effectively. To an extent, I would like to push myself further down the line, but I would like to push myself with an ambitious project, because I'm usually quite conservative. Obviously, the sort of major goal is to make a feature-length film in the next 4 years. So start your timers. No, I'm trying to set that goal for the next 4 years, because I don't want to keep pushing it back and to maybe eventually just forget about that dream. Like, I really do want to direct a feature-length film in the next 4 to 5 years, hopefully. Once I'm a little bit more established and have a little bit more control, I would love to continue to work with some of the cast and the crew that I've already worked with in the past, because I think it's important to develop those creative relationships, and it really does make a much better product. So, slightly different, but I would like to learn also more about theatre. I'm interested especially in mise en scène and rehearsal techniques when it comes to theatre, because the rehearsal period, or the rehearsals themselves, I've heard are quite long and intense, and I'm curious to see how the director and the actors go about that. Thank you for listening. That's all for today, and see you again next week.